Welcome back to Prospect Produce Prosper. I am John Jag Gay. I'm joined again by Marc Rogers from Producers Prospect. Hello, Marc.
How we doing, Jag? I'm excited about today, bud.
I'm excited to learn today because I got to admit, this is an area that I'm not as learned in as I'd like to be, and I think it's a really big opportunity for the advisors that are listening to your podcast today, and that is having to do with annuities. With all the tumult we've seen in the market since COVID and even since the start of 2022, annuities, sometimes they have a bad rap, but they can be a very valuable tool for our listeners to present to their clients.
Well, first off, we should start with, Jag, you're not alone.
Okay.
You know, my firm does a bunch of surveys, and even past my firm, you know, a lot of research companies will send out surveys to investors, and they'll ask, what's your ideal retirement, right? Mm-hmm. If you picked an investment, what would you want? And of course, things come back, especially when times are volatile, like today, and people want no risk to their money. And they want taxable strategies, right? Or tax favorable strategies, I should say.
Yep.
And they're worried about running out of money more than they fear death. And so they are really looking for making sure that income lasts through retirement. And when you look at all these things that people are actually asking for, the definition is an annuity.
It seems like it could be a sort of a, not maybe 2 or 3 or 4 birds with one stone kind of thing.
Well, and that's just it. But when you say the word annuity in the survey, like what's your feeling about annuities? You know, people come back with a negative or I don't really understand them, or what is that, you know? So annuities have been around for decades and decades, right? And I think that there's a lot of misconceptions because there are a lot of different types of annuities. And I like to say, when you go down to buy a car now, you just expect that a backup camera and Bluetooth is like standard issue.
Right.
Well, just like that, annuities have really adapted and changed with the times. So annuities today are not your grandparents or your great-grandparents' annuities. And yet somehow in our mind, we've locked into, well, that's an old person product. Or, oh, no, the gotchas are, they have high fees. They don't have liquidity. You have to annuitize or take a payment to get out of it. But that's really not the case today. They've made these so much more attractive. But there are so many different types. And every company that offers these type of investments are different. And everybody has kind of their own purpose or niche. And so it's a lot and it's daunting. Like as an investor, the other thing is there's not a lot of information. You really rely on working with a financial professional, whether they're an insurance agent or a financial advisor, to define the differences. And that's why today being more of an independent or I think a fiduciary standard as an advisor is so important. So Jag, you're not alone. And today I'm hoping that we cover some of these misunderstandings, the unknowns, and I'm hoping to bring some clarity to why annuities today.
So I feel a little bit better because, again, when you use that word annuity, my eyes tend to glaze over a little bit. So give me a basic understanding, Marc. You said they're a lot better now than where they were before, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. Kind of give me the basics of what an annuity is. I know there's a lot of different types, but sort of give me a quick 101 and how that's going to affect our audience and what they can present to their clients.
The concept of annuities came from insurance companies, and where they really started was think of a pension or think of Social Security.
Yeah.
Maybe even think of winning the lottery, right? And when any of those things, there really fundamentally are types of annuities. You get a lump sum, you put it into an annuity, and you get a payment, whether that's on a monthly basis or a set period of time or over a lifetime or over your lifetime and your spouse's lifetime. That's really fundamentally where these things came from. And the insurance carriers, you know, really built them because they understand life expectancy. So they could say, John, you know, you give me $1 million today and you're 65. I know that I can generate a payment for the rest of your life, guaranteed. And you get to make a little bit of interest along the way, but you don't have to worry about running out of money.
Okay.
That's fundamentally where annuities came from. But they've developed, right? And in the 80s and 90s, the variable annuity really approached itself. And that came from where people said, well, I'm not necessarily ready to get an income stream today. Maybe I've got 5 years, 10 years away from retirement. So in the meantime, what can you do for me? And the variable annuity was born in that you could put your lump sum in. So let's say you left your job and you wanted to roll your 401k over now and do an IRA. that IRA could be placed in the variable annuity, or you had money coming out of a CD or, money sitting in your bank account that you wanted to invest, it could go into that variable annuity. You could buy the market. So you had all these different sub accounts that you could invest in, and that could grow until you were ready to say, okay, now I'm 65, I'm 67, and now I want to start distributing money or pulling money back out of my annuity for my retirement. And then the insurance carrier typically gave you that guaranteed lifetime income stream. So different from when you buy the actual market, like you go out and buy the S&P today, right?
Yeah.
And you're 55. And then you get to 65, you got to pick a number. And you got to pick a distribution number that you're going to make your money last to retirement. You're playing the insurance carrier's position there. And what you don't know is when you have market volatility and you still got to pull your money out, now you're pulling your money out from a smaller bucket of money. Of course, you got fees and other things that are going to erode your account. So where the annuity comes into place today is just the simplicity of it, right? Let's say you have a pension today, you have Social Security. So those are the things you're going to base your income off of. An annuity can kind of bridge the gap to that missing piece to say, just like your pension, just like your Social Security, here's another paycheck that's showing up every month that's coming to you. That was traditionally the variable annuity. Variable annuities over the last kind of 10, 20 years, where they're still significantly relevant. There have been some product developments because some investors are saying, Jag, I don't want to take the risk. I don't want to have the market, or I already have money in the market other places. What other things can you offer? And so the fixed indexed annuity was really born, and this is my true area of expertise.
Okay.
And I'm a firm believer in them, which is this offers during the deferral process a time in which you have simply no risk to the market. So in the fixed indexed annuity, they can still track along the S&P, or today they can track gold. We have big time money managers like BlackRock and Fidelity, but you can essentially track along those returns. But when the market goes down, you get a zero.
Okay.
Now there's no free lunch, right? We all know there's just no free lunch out there. So you got to give up some of the upside. So it's kind of like the tortoise and hare type of situation, right?
Okay, yeah.
So when the market goes down, you hold and you keep what you have. When the market goes up, let's say on the S&P, you're capturing maybe 65, 70% of the upside of the S&P.
You're not getting the full upside when the market is up, but you're also protecting yourself when the market is down. And that goes to your original point, Marc, which is people's biggest fear is running out of money in retirement. So an annuity by an insurance company is quite literally an insurance policy at this point.
So here's an easy way to look at it. One, you buy life insurance for what purpose?
To protect the people you're leaving behind if something happens to you.
Yeah, there's a percentage, and actuaries understand that you and I could pass away, right?
Sure.
And so that's why we buy life insurance. You buy auto insurance because there's a percent chance that you could get in an accident, right? You buy homeowners insurance because there's a percent chance that your home's going to catch fire this year.
Sure.
Well, why not have an insurance policy on your retirement?
I like it.
And that's where an annuity really fits into that space. And again, this isn't for all your money. But what's interesting today as we look in the marketplace, market's at an all-time high.
Mm-hmm.
We're at the longest equity bull run that we've ever, U.S. history's ever seen before.
Right.
And when you lead up to 2009, you could actually go back to the beginning of the S&P and you would see a major market correction happen every 7 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like to say to people, nobody likes to leave a party when the party's just getting good. Right?
I like that.
But we've been at a party for a really long time. So you and I would probably both believe it's not going to be all roses for another 10, 20 years. We're not going to repeat what we just saw since 08, 09. Probably not, right?
This party is now 5, 6 a.m. At some point, we've got to go home.
Time to go home. And to go along with that, I follow along things like Robert Shiller. Shiller's a Yale University professor and economist, and he has something called the Shiller PE10, price to earnings ratio. Mm-hmm. So simply put, he can go back, at all different markets and show you, is the market overvalued, undervalued, or priced correctly? And today, Shiller is saying that the market is more overvalued than Black Tuesday.
Yikes.
and nearly as overvalued as the .com. Do you remember when the .com bubble became .gone?
Yeah, .com, .gone. I like that. Yeah, I remember that right around the turn of the century.
So these are the only two times in history where Shiller is saying today the market is overvalued. So that would give us a test to say we believe that we're going to have significant volatility just given what history's told us. And then, Jag, we've been at this long declining interest rate environment, and go back to 1980s. And now we've been at this long stretch. So never before have we been on this long equity bull run at the same time we've had declining interest rates. Well, now interest rates are starting to rise, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's a relationship between your fixed income, specifically your bond portfolio, and most people own bond funds today, that in your safe portfolio where you allocate to bonds, when interest rates rise, your bond values go down.
Right.
Now, that is an interesting concept because people are saying, well, I'm not making any yield in my CDs. Remember, those are certificates of depreciation that you buy at the bank today?
Basically worth nothing at a 0% interest rate right now.
Okay, so that's normally what, remember, we used to buy CDs for safe money, and then you have bonds. Now, that's a question mark because as interest rates rise, your bond values will continue to decline. And then you have an overinflated market. And people are living longer. Mm-hmm. Fewer and fewer people have pension plans today.
Right. Changes
to Social Security all have the stars aligning for what many economists are saying we're kind of in that perfect storm today. So where do we go? And what's an option?
That perfect storm is exactly the phrase that came to mind as you're describing all this, including no guarantee of how much Social Security is going to be there when you and I get into our late 60s at this point, Mark.
I'm not even banking on that. And do I think Social Security is going away anytime soon? I would probably say no, because Social Security recipients are voters.
Yes.
And that's a big population, right? But
yep.
The reality is that thank goodness to healthcare advancements, people are living longer. The bad news is people are living longer. And so you got to make your money last, right? And so I think that there's a problem. And the problem is that we as investors at some point have to pick a number, a distribution number, that we gather up all of our money when we get to that ideal retirement age that we're ready to retire. And then we got to pick a distribution number to make sure that our money lasts. So this is all just to say, Jack, that by making just a few different allocation changes and by implementing something that takes no market risk, takes no interest rate risk, still has a reasonable rate of return, and can generate income that you can never outlive and has death benefit or long-term care benefits, like it's kind of more of a Swiss Army as a piece of the pie. Again, I'm not saying this for all your money, but I'm just saying it has merit and it validates today, yet just people don't know what it's called.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned long-term care insurance because that goes in hand with what you were saying a moment ago about we're living longer and being afraid of outliving our money. All it takes is a quick Google search to see how much nursing home costs or in-home care costs. And that can bleed you dry in the blink of an eye, or not to unintentionally rhyme there, but it really can. So that's an important point as well. So what would you say to advisors who are listening, Mark, that get pushback from clients? So we've explained now what an annuity is and how it can be used for, like you said, the Swiss Army knife approach here for a portion of your retirement money. How do our advisors best explain this to their clients who, like me, at the beginning of this conversation, their eyes glaze over when they hear the word annuity?
Well, education is the key, and I think that you got to address it in a way that is appropriate on where you're allocating, and you got to show people how it works within the entire portfolio. Here's where this piece of pie fits. There's nothing more frustrating when you sit down with an investor and they say, "No, I'm diversified. I've got my money in 6 different banks." Yeah.
Or I'm invested in Apple, Google, and Microsoft. I'm diversified.
Yeah. And by the way, we see that every single day, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the education starts with the advisor. I think that given how you entered financial services tends to dictate what type of advisor that you are. So if you came out of the wirehouse, annuities have just been such a bad word for so long that you're like, I don't know where it fits in the portfolio. Or if you grew up in the insurance business, sometimes, everybody looks like a nail because all you had is a hammer, right? and so I think it's finding the appropriate way to have that conversation. And we've built at Producers Prospect a bunch of resources and tools to make it very easy. Like we've written white papers that you can sit down with your investor and have, third-party education. We've built PowerPoint slide decks that you can utilize one-on-one in front of the investor. Frankly, we do a bunch of coaching. So we do monthly calls on how to use the language and the process, how to tee up the annuity to make sure that it's suitable and it's talked about appropriately, because I'm the guy that wants to give you all the good, bad, and the ugly, right?
Yeah.
And I think that when you see annuities used incorrectly, it normally tends to the fact that people don't understand, right? Or they don't remember how you positioned it. So I think giving full education and really teaching somebody how to appropriately describe and utilize this overall. We've got some great software. So let's just say you and I are sitting down. You and I could put together an income plan where I could actually show the annuity within your plan and without the plan. And just showing more of that success percentages or probability that your income is going to last. Because I like to say, do we want our income plan to be probable or predictable? If you're more interested in a predictable, well, here's a tool, here's a resource that we can sit down. So again, this just helps the advisor say, here's why we're validating all the other things that we're already doing for you within the wealth management side. But here, by carving and making a suggestion, here's how much better that your success or probability if your ultimate risk tolerance is saying that you want that, right? And that's how we can help you.
I think that is so important because it's easy to have this, nebulous idea of what an annuity is and whatever other connotations that you might have come along with it. But to actually have the resources to provide to the advisors you work with to be able to then in turn go to the client and put it in black and white in front of them and say, here's what it looks like with, here's what it looks like without, here are the numbers. And to be able to visually understand that and see those numbers in front of you is just so valuable.
Yeah, and going back to your conversation, I think that education needs to start in all different types of mediums. So we got all different types of learners out there, as you know. So I think that you need to have a deliverable for an investor that they can read, because you're going to have the intellectuals that just really, really want to read and have something in their hand. I think a great podcast on different topics, including annuities, is something that every advisor should be doing and delivering. I think a YouTube page.
Yep.
Where they got just 2-minute, 3-minute kind of the good, bad, and the ugly about annuities and a bunch of different topics that are now showing up on their website. I think you should be writing articles. I think you should be doing TV ads and radio ads on top of those live events that we've talked about in previous conversations, really exposing and educating on the, where these are suitable and where they're appropriate and why you would want to use one versus the other.
That is so important. I think about how everybody is, a different type of learner. You want to meet your audience where they are. My wife and I are planning a trip to Iceland this summer, and she's mapping out her itinerary. She can talk to me until she's blue in the face about what sites we're going to see and what days we're going to go on this trip. But until she puts a list in front of me and says, Monday this, Tuesday this, Wednesday this, I cannot get it through my thick, bald head what our itinerary is going to be until I actually see it in front of me. So if somebody's a visual learner, you put it in front of them. You put it up on YouTube. If they want to listen to a podcast while they're walking their dog or driving somewhere, it is so important just to meet these clients where they are so that you can best get your point across and help them understand and be better suited for their financial future.
100%. 100%. I just think that what's really changed, especially with COVID, and again, we've talked about this on other previous podcasts, but there's merit to bring it up again. What's changed is when investors are surveyed, their expectation of being educated is from their advisor.
Yeah.
They feel like, hey, I'm paying this advisor fees, or he's making a commission on the investments I'm doing. Therefore, they should be delivering. So an article from Forbes being forwarded to your client doesn't count as education, right? So a monthly webinar, a podcast, a live educational event, a newsletter that is also showing up digital. Just so many different ways that you can get out there and tell the story. But I think that the story needs to be told. And I think that there's been no better time in our marketplace that people are wanting this type of investment. And therefore, I think it's our job to certainly, especially if you're under a fiduciary standard, that you should be utilizing these type of resources to deliver that education.
It's like you said in a previous episode, Mark, really getting in there with your clients' lives, knowing their kids' names, what sports they play, being on their Facebook on their birthday with a picture of you with that client last time they were in your office. Having that bond and that friendship creates that trust between yourself and the client so that when you've done that legwork to really provide information and provide that trust, make that connection, and really become not just a trusted advisor, but almost a friend, not almost, but a friend, that helps create that connection where you can better explain a complex concept like an annuity and have them trust your judgment and be able to have that much better footing to have this conversation.
I totally agree. Now, on the other side of the coin to that, what's interesting is I think we as advisors always want to validate our intelligence. Sometimes we're so analytical in the sense that's why you're in the profession, because typically advisors spend so much time talking about here's how to invest, here's how to buy stocks, here's how to buy bonds, right? And the reality is, and you look at Daniel Pink, who's a great social science researcher, and he really talks about purpose. There's many of these types of, social science education that all points back to the fact that we as people, our why really comes from purpose. And so I think that what will help in the sense is making sure that we're not over talking to our investor, that we're not just saying a bunch of things in hopes that we overwhelm them, and we keep concepts in that old classic, keep it simple, stupid.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So let me give you an example. Like if you and I were to sit down and I said, Jag, we're going to play a game today. And I've got all these dollar bills sitting here and I've got a quarter. And every time I flip heads, I give you $1. And every time I flip tails, we break even. So let's play the game.
All right.
And we're flipping quarters and heads, here's your $1, heads, here's your $1, tails, we break even. If that were the game, how long would you play with me?
Forever.
As long as I got dollar bills, you're playing.
Exactly. It sounds like flipping that at a bar in college, but that's another conversation altogether.
That is another conversation. But, so that's the fixed indexed annuity concept. So, hey, the market can only do 3 things. And let's just say you're out golfing and you have a potential investor with you. Mm-hmm. You could lay 3 tees on the ground and you could say, hey, the market's only really does 3 things, right? Market goes up. So you put a T pointing up. The market could stay flat. So you put one flat, and then the market can go down. So you have a T pointing down. Let me ask you, Jag, before you tee off here, and you're going to hit it straight down the middle. But if you wanted to eliminate one of these things from the market in your, which one would you want to eliminate?
I don't even golf, but I can still follow this analogy. You want to get rid of that T that's pointing the wrong way. Absolutely.
So my point to you is, and of course, that's the initial just to open up and get somebody's mind to see things differently. You don't have to have this massive intellectual conversation, but you can kind of get to people's feeling of risk tolerance and worried about, truly how they're feeling internally about their portfolio with simple, basic concepts. And I've got those short presentations that advisors can utilize, the language that it's not just me, it's not the Marc Rogers Holy Grail. Of course, I've taken this stuff from every mega advisor that I've ever met with, and I've kind of compiled it into a book of here's what to say, here's how to say it. And I'm excited actually, and so I'll just plug our next podcast, but I've got a very, very special guest coming in, and he's created his method and he's taken his process and really combined that together. So any advisor, even if you're his competition right down the street, can hook into him and utilize that type of art of communication and language to help you more successfully communicate, educate, and have potential people become long-term investors with you. So stay tuned because this is a perfect segue to that next podcast.
And before I let you go, Mark, if an advisor wants to come work with you, a producer's prospect, what are the best ways to find you?
Everybody should go to producersprospect.com. I mean, that's where we should all start together. You can link right onto my Calendly and set up a one-on-one time to work together. Of course, I'm showing up on Instagram, on Facebook. If you punched in Producers Prospect, you'll find me there and find out what city I am in. Sometimes it's multiple cities during the week. But let's have a conversation. first and foremost, and let's get started.
As I'm looking behind you here, Marc, on the podcast, I'm realizing you're at home and not in a hotel room, which is a rarity for us. So you're always on the road, you're always working with advisors, and I know they appreciate you. I appreciate your time today. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Chad.